Thanks for joining us today here on American Retirement Headquarters, home of the Retirement Guys Formula and America's Medicare Associates with Nolan Baker and Scott Kirshner. Myself, my name is Chris Swan. Really do part of the day with us today. Here's how you reach out, 419-794-3030. Once again, 419-794-3030 on americasretirementheadquarters.com. On today's show, the TV comedy star admits she's been left out of her famous mother's will. We're going to talk about a bagel tax. Yes, that is actually a thing. Why weird taxes are just another reason for a good tax strategy. And we're going to pay tribute to a late, great Hall of Fame sportscaster. All this and more. First, I got to check in with the guys. Nolan, Scott, as always, glad to be with you. How you doing today?
Doing great. We're excited. We had a good interview that we did last weekend talking about the Toledo Jeep Fest that's going on here in Northwest Ohio this weekend. So, for anybody who's looking for something fun to do this weekend, make sure you get out to the Toledo Jeep Fest downtown. 65,000 people came out last year, and another exciting event. If you missed the interview, or heck, if you missed any one of our past interviews that we had, we post them all online. You can get them at any podcast that's out there, whether it's the Spotify, the Apple podcast, or even check us out on YouTube. Just type America's Retirement Headquarters. So enjoying the summer, and time's gone by. I know my son is getting counting down the days till he goes back to college, and of course my other son going back off to high school. So where'd summer go?
Yeah, I know it's long gone, and we talked last week. I made a trip 2 weeks ago to Kent to get a trailer load of my daughter's belongings out of her house she was renting with 3 other girls. And then last weekend, my wife and I went to town about 25 minutes outside of Cleveland and moved her into a new apartment. So, it was crazy. It was like 90 degrees, right? Mm-hmm. And kind of like, whether you like him or not, but kind of like Donald Trump always says, the best place to be is on the top floor. Well, she was in the penthouse. She was on the top floor, no elevator, lugging all of those boxes upstairs. So my leg workout was complete for the next 6 months, I think, after that. But no, it's good to have her getting settled in, starting a job and career, and doing her thing now.
Yeah, I was going to say, you can go and take the rest of the year off. Maybe, hopefully until next year, not having to move anybody again. And then be at that point, just, there are certain things that are just worth the price to pay. And that one might be one where you might want to just go ahead and pay for the movers going forward. When it comes to your retirement, it's not something that you necessarily want to do yourself. You definitely want to offer some professionals there. And again, the team at America's Retirement Headquarters, they're here for you. 419-794-3030 is that number. Guys, I saw a new survey that found nearly 4 in 5 financial professionals have actually changed their approach to retirement planning in the last year. Now, I don't think that you are one of them. What made you change, and how did you adjust to the fear of running out of money? But also, if you didn't make any changes, which, again, I'm thinking is more likely, why have you guys stayed the course?
Well, I think if you look at it, again, being in a business for over 20 years in financial services, one of the things that scares me is the fact that, that many people are making changes. So, oftentimes what happens is an investor will get into some type of plan, and then all of a sudden the plan starts to appear like it's not working, and they'll want to change courses. And what that oftentimes means is that an investor buys an investment, it goes down in price, and all of a sudden they change strategy, so they maybe go to something safe and what appears to be better. So if we look at like the course of this year, right? So the stock market, again, depending upon what index that you look at, it topped out back in like November, December, January, and then it has proceeded to fall for the first, really 6 months.
Right.
But, towards the end of June, the market actually, for the most part, has bottomed out. The market's had a nice rally and recovery. So had an investor really dramatically changed their overall approach, one more time, the markets will teach a painful lesson that, changing gears after the fact, it's like trying to drive looking in your rear view mirror, which oftentimes doesn't work very well. What I would say is being a former Marine, as a veteran of the Marine Corps, I think the Marines taught me to be adaptive.
Sure.
And so one of the things that I would say is, we've had to be somewhat adaptive overall in the marketplace. So back in the past when COVID really came out and we were worried about companies maybe going out of business, worrying about, what companies or sectors to be in, we started running an analysis and looking at stocks that had high cash, low debt positions. We started looking at companies that have things that are needed every single day. So like the companies that provide the cereal and the soda pop and the food, and even though inflation has made food costs higher, you're still going to the grocery store.
Right.
You may complain about it a little bit more. So trying to be adaptive. The other thing that, we've kind of been adaptive is a lot of investors are trying to figure out, do I get in or out of the market? It's this constant battle, and it's an emotional challenge. And I think as Chaz at our office points out, if you're getting in and out of the market, you've got to get it right twice. So you've got to decide when's the right time to get out and when's the right time to get back in. And again, if you look at the average study that's out there, the average investor, has a hard time and typically can get it wrong. So one of the things that we've done is we've been using a lot of hedging strategies. So like our protected equity portfolio, what it does is it allows you to participate, as the markets recover, but provides further downside if and when the markets go down. And then, of course, if you've been listening either for a past year or the past 20 years that we've been on radio here on WSPD, you know that we've been talking about the last several years as interest rates have bottomed out. It's a good idea to be adaptive and start looking for changes to the bond market. So the best advice I can give is be careful if you're an investor and somebody's giving you advice to make big changes after something happens.
Yeah, absolutely. That kind of ties into a little bit about what I do. You see these commercials come on and people freak out and they want to change all of a sudden. It's like, oh my gosh, I hear this. And, my dad, I miss him dearly, but my dad was one of those guys. I'm like, Dad, for crying out loud, I'm your son. You think I'm going to steer you wrong? But he would always see these commercials knowing that his son is in the business and freak out and say, son, I saw this commercial and now it says I can get this. Am I all set? One of the things you really hit on, Nolan, is kind of one of the things I do. I've adapted. I had some philosophies and mindsets on how I would sell like certain products, like dental insurance, for example. And I would go through this and say, you know what, dental insurance is dollar for dollar. You pay this premium and it's basically going to cover dollar for dollar. But what I've realized is the more I'm working with some of these companies is I realize that dental insurance is a pretty good thing to purchase because even though it's dollar for dollar, but you also have the additional coverages if you need them in the future. So I've adapted as an advisor and a Medicare agent selling to clients. And like you said, be wary of the person that's out there telling you, hey, you need to change this. This plan is not best for you anymore unless it's a professional like yourself or me.
Yeah, and we just got everything updated. So a final thought for those listening. Again, go to americasretirementheadquarters.com, and right there on the main screen when you log in, we've got a brand new video that talks about the threats and opportunities, facing retirees. So we talk about how to better manage your money, protect your hard-earned assets, and officially plan your estate. And we'll talk in that video, we'll talk about the different threats and opportunities. Again, that's available right on our website. Or for anybody that's out there, just Google independent income system. It'll take you right to that video that gives you some more pointers on this topic. So
it's all about, being able to control what you can control. And it's pretty easy when, everything is going crazy to feel like you're out of control and want to make changes. But more often than not, almost all the time, can't speak in absolutes here, but making those drastic changes is going to be costly in the long run when it comes to, timing the market. The saying, it's better to be lucky than good, doesn't really hold water there because you have to do it twice, like Nolan said. So having an actual strategy put in place beforehand to know that these things are going to happen and to account for all of them all starts with picking up the phone, giving a call to America's Retirement Headquarters, 419-794-3030, or go online to americasretirementheadquarters.com. Another thing that people don't necessarily think about in the working world but can become a factor in retirement is long-term care. We've talked before about the spiraling costs of long-term care insurance, and because of that, Barron says a lot of seniors are now going with other insurance products that cover those long-term care needs. So aside from that black and white long-term care policy, what other kinds of options are there?
Well, I think there are some great options. So if you boil it down, there's really kind of 5 categories. So one is, a lot of people make a decision to do nothing. And that, quite frankly, is making a decision. And that decision is if you need long-term medical care, you're going to just pay for it out of pocket.
Absolutely.
Some people can afford to do that. Other people are just hoping that the heads or tails coin toss doesn't end on them. Certainly for those of you that served in our military, there's some veteran benefits. So as a veteran-owned business, if you're not familiar with that, we work with a couple of elder care attorneys. So there's Medicaid strategies. that can be done for planning. So things like getting prepaid funerals, knowing what the rules and regulations are through attorneys are great options. Traditional long-term care insurance is getting a lot more challenging because the costs keep going up and up. I had met with some 90-year-olds last week for their annual review. They had bought long-term care insurance. They received their letter from a major insurance company. Their premiums are going up by 87%.
Wow.
And they're, they're in their 90s.
Yeah.
So I'm, talking with them. They're healthy. They look like they're in their 60s, quite frankly.
Sure.
They could live for a long time and just simply pass away one day and pay this increased cost. And so it is somewhat challenging. So the two ideas that for a listener I'll give you is, one is a life leverage plan. This allows you to put either a lump sum of money, or you can take, oftentimes we'll take a 1, 2, or 3% withdrawal rate out of an investment or a retirement account and fund it over a course of a lifetime. And what it does is it creates instant protection if somebody needs critical, chronic, or terminal illness coverage. And it's also a life insurance policy. So if you have your beneficiaries named correctly, it could be paid out income tax-free, probate-free cash. Now, with life insurance, you have to qualify for it, so you have to be healthy and have to pass, some qualifications.
Mm-hmm.
But the other option is annuities with long-term care or type of doublers for income options. So there can be some strategies too. Those are a lot of things that I use. I don't know. What do you think, Scott?
Well, absolutely. The life insurance, like you said, I would say the biggest downfall with the life insurance policy is you have to qualify, and if your health isn't the greatest, it may be difficult. But the life insurance with a long-term care rider, or even the annuity with a long-term care benefits in as well, has really kind of taken over the old traditional long-term care policies. The nice thing about they call them the hybrid plans now, right? So the hybrid life insurance plan is what I really like to sell that for those that are in their health would allow them to qualify. But the way it works is instead of paying that premium like the old traditional, and you go into a nursing home, and the lifespan of someone going to a nursing home is anywhere from 1 to 3 years, and something were to happen, you pass away, your beneficiaries get nothing. All of that money is basically gone. And the reason why people really like the hybrid is because there is some death benefit that is attached to the long-term care benefits. One of the things to keep in mind is Medicare does not pay for long-term care at all. Medicaid, if you qualify, Medicaid will actually cover some long-term care coverage as well, but you are also in a facility that they dictate where you're going to go. Not always the best option, One of the things you mentioned was prepaid funeral expenses. So I took my mom to the funeral home to visit a family of surviving family of someone that passed away, and the gentleman came up to her and said he had everything paid for. So we get in the car to take her back home, and she says, "Son, that guy, he said that the best thing they ever did was buy prepaid funeral expenses. They didn't have to worry about anything. Everything was taken care of." And I said, "Well, Mom, that's one of the things that we do here at America's Retirement Headquarters." And those are always good things. So like you said, Nolan, I totally agree that there are some options out there. I think the least attractive option is to do nothing. You don't want to necessarily depend on your family to take care of you, your kids. That's very taxing and stressful on them as well. I'm crossing that bridge with my mom right now, and long-term care can cost anywhere from $3,000 to $7,000, $8,000 a month, depending on the quality and type of care you need. There are assisted living facilities and apartment type facilities out there, but to do nothing is probably not your best option. We can absolutely make sure that you at least have the tools and mechanisms available if you do have to go into a home.
Being able to explore all the different options out there when it comes to long-term care, if it is that traditional use it or lose it policy, to maybe using one of these hybrid policies that has that component built into it without any underwriting. As Scott said, there's a lot of different ways out there. The worst thing you can do these days, I think it's like a 70% chance that every retiree is going to need some form of long-term care assistance. So the worst thing you can do is not plan for long-term care at all. Explore all the options, see what's going to work best for you. give a call to the team at America's Retirement Headquarters, 419-794-3030, or go online to the website. Schedule a time there as well, americasretirementheadquarters.com. This is America's Retirement Headquarters. A sitcom star says she was basically pushed out of the nest by her famous mother. We're going to hear her story when we come back from the break. And welcome back to America's Retirement Headquarters, home of the Retirement Guys Formula and America's Medicare Associates. 419-794-3030 is the number. AmericasRetirementHeadquarters.com is the website, like Nolan said earlier in the show. If you've missed previous editions of the show, interviews, or you just want to catch up just via podcast, available, whatever your medium of it is, just search for America's Retirement Headquarters, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, there for you on demand to check out at your leisure. Just search for AmericasRetirementHeadquarters.com. Guys, we've talked about annuities before. They are an investment contract between you and an insurance company. In exchange for a sum or a series of payments, you usually get guaranteed return as stated interest rates. But here's the thing. Are they for everybody? How do you guys help clients answer that and steer clear of any obstacles that a particular annuity might present?
Well, I can think of a meeting I had earlier this week when I sat down with a couple that we've worked together for more than a dozen years, and they have some annuities in their portfolio, and they were kind of confused, even though they've had these contracts for a while. And annuities can be a confusing topics. You know, what they said is, I hear all these good things and I hear all these bad things about annuities. And so if we break it down, really, you know, what you have to start with is an annuity is a contract. So it's a contract with an insurance company. Mm-hmm. And within that contract, there are different types of contracts guarantees that you can purchase. And again, you know, when you look at it and read the fine print, the guarantee is only as good as the claims paying insurance company. So you want to work with, you know, somebody who's an A-rated or financially sound company. In contracts and guarantees, you could have what is called a fixed annuity. Mm-hmm. So a fixed annuity is an investment that pays a fixed rate of return that has a set number of years that rate is typically quoted out for. In fact, you know, one of the things that's been extremely impressive is because we've seen these bumps in interest rates this year, you know, we're starting to see the fixed rates of most traditional accounts that can range in that 3 to 5 year time frame. You know, those fixed rates I've seen anywhere from 4 to 4.5% rates now today. So, you know, rates have really started to come back up in the fixed account. The next is what you call a indexed annuity. So an indexed annuity is a type of contract that allows you to participate usually in a percentage of gains when the market or the underlying index goes up, but it's protecting you against loss if and when the market goes down. You know, so in that type of contract, what you're trying to do is do a little bit better than a traditional fixed account. Right. You know, earn interest when the market goes up, but, you know, have the safety of principal. And then the third kind is a variable annuity. So a variable annuity, just like the word implies, usually means that it goes up and down with the stocks and bonds or the underlying what's called sub-accounts. So it generally has market risk, and most people will use variable annuities for what's called an income rider. Okay. You know, so they'll have some type of income that they can get income for a guaranteed period of time, either their lifetime. So the first thing I think that you have to do is you have to go back to what is the desired goal and what is the outcome that you're looking to try to accomplish.
Do you typically sell the variables?
I usually don't. So when you hear about annuities are expensive, right? That's one of the things that people say. Right. Well, in almost all scenarios, they're really referring to variable annuities because when you have a variable annuity, you typically have mortality and expense ratios. You have sub-account expense ratios. Mm-hmm. You have administrative fees. You have rider charges. And so it's oftentimes, you know, those type of contracts that get to be extremely expensive. I can think of one particular client that I have that, you know, he wants to be able to be in the market and participate with the market. But at the same time, he can't sleep at night knowing that if something ever happens to him and he passes away, his wife's not taken care of. Right. So in his situation, the variable annuity kind of makes sense because it can protect, you know, through a death benefit, his surviving spouse. Okay. For those people, you know, that the market's close to an all-time high and you want to try to protect your income, those would be the areas that you take a look at them. But most commonly, what I would utilize is the fixed or the index annuities in my practice. Right. So, you know, if we look at bonds have had a really big challenge. And, you know, if you've been listening to the show, we've been telling you about this for a while. But bond funds continue to face interest risk. We also manage money predominantly with Charles Schwab, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for a client, say, to pay us to manage money in a portfolio in an asset class like, traditional bonds that are going to be maybe a losing asset class. What we can do is we can take that, remove that out of the portfolio, insert something like a fixed account or an indexed annuity, and then that one is going to eliminate the management fees and expenses. And number two, it's going to have more of a predictable outcome. Certainly, both scenarios, the fixed or the index, going to principally protect them against market decline, but then give them a better opportunity, at least in my opinion, than what they could have got in the traditional bond fund account. So for those of you that are listening, if you have bond funds, if you've heard about the pros and cons of annuities, it is a confusing topic. That's why we've created, again, more YouTube videos on this topic, talking about what is a fixed index annuity. It's something that if you have an annuity and you're like, I don't really know if this annuity is in my best interest. I don't really even understand how it works. Maybe your agent who sold it to you got out of business. Maybe you're just looking for a second opinion. We'd be happy to sit down and go through your annuity contract and talk to you about, what you have, what the pros and cons are, what the fees and expenses are. But just like the client that I met with, there are good and there are bad annuities.
Sure.
Good and bad stuff out there.
Yep.
Absolutely. And, you may have heard bad things out there. If you have, go ahead and bring that to the table when you have the conversation with America's Retirement Headquarters. They pride themselves, as you can hear on the show, as you've seen on the YouTube videos, on education and offering insight. And so, bring that to the table. They'll have the discussion and say, yes, not all annuities are created, not necessarily right for everybody out there, but to see if it could be a valuable part of your retirement toolbox, so to speak. 419-794-3030 is how you go about doing that, how you get started. There, guys, there was an article on the Motley Fool website that addressed the importance of having an emergency fund in case you deal with a sudden hardship while in retirement. It said not having one, but actually several years of living expenses saved. What do you think about that? Do you agree? And can you craft a retirement plan where you don't have to imagine a retired life without a paycheck?
Well, I think having emergency accounts, to me, is a no-brainer. I mean, my kid going off to college at his young age, I think it's a good idea to have some emergency account. In fact, even some emergency funds. So, like one of the things that I do in my wallet, there's a special hidden spot that I keep $100. I was years ago, I was out and, my credit card, I think I got it zapped because I got it close to a magnet.
Sure.
So it didn't work.
Yep.
And so luckily I had a, backup $100 so I could buy, some food and get me through that travel plan. So, small things like that down to when you get into your working life, it's a good idea to have 6 months worth of living expenses set aside in case you lose your job. But when you get closer to or in retirement time, it is crucial to have an emergency account set aside. And I would agree with the Motley Fool article that it's several years. So for those of you that are drawing current income off of the portfolio, pay attention to this. If you're taking money out of your stock market account and the stock or bond market is going down, you're selling off more and more of your investments each and every month to come up with the same paycheck. Right. You're actually negative compounding your account. You're accelerating your risk of outliving your money. There's been so many studies on this talking about the sequence of returns. It's so much better off, at least in my opinion, and that's why we have the process called the independent income system. So within the independent income system, what we do is we set up the current income bucket of money. In that current income bucket of money, what we're looking to do is we're looking to set aside, 3 to 5 years worth of money. And that's not to say that it's not a bad idea to pull money off the stock market. Right. Like in 2021, the stock market went up. So it's okay to sell and take profits. But, in the beginning of 2022, when the markets were challenged, you need to have some backup plans, just like what we had talked about a minute ago when we were talking about annuities. If we have an index annuity that was principally protected against market loss, if the market goes down, it allows us to switch our withdrawal strategies and or take money out of those accounts to fill up that current income bucket of money. So, guys, if you're listening and you're taking money out of retirement or you're within 5 years of retirement, now's a great time to take a look at developing a current income bucket of money that can help protect you if you need money within the next 5 years. Again, if you want to know more about that whole process, just Google independent income system, or in fact, go over to our website, americasretirementheadquarters.com. Right on the main banner, you can see threats and opportunities where we break you down these different areas. But having several years, I think, is a good idea.
There's no question. Look what happened back when COVID hit. If you were in retirement, you're not going to be able to recover with some of the losses that were hit out there. You and I, we're still working and we can still recover from that. But if you don't have that money set aside for that disastrous or catastrophic situation that pops up, and it could even be health, you never know. And we talk about the different buckets of money. We're not talking about the little red pail. We're talking about having money set aside for those emergency situations. I can't echo that enough. I mean, it is very, very important to have money put aside for that emergency. I told my daughter, here you are, you're starting to work, you're starting to make some money. You definitely want to make sure you put some money aside for when that, microwave goes out or that refrigerator goes out or something like that. You don't want to end up trying to live paycheck to paycheck.
Isn't that what Dad's for?
No, that is what Dad's for. That is. I need to see.
Those of you who don't have a Scott Kirshner.
Right.
Yeah.
I need to see your wallet there, Nolan.
Exactly.
If you don't have a Scott Kirshner as your emergency fund, a better way is to go ahead and plan for it ahead of time. Go ahead and setting aside, if you can, years of living expenses so you don't have to compound those losses. It could take a little bit of time, but the team at America's Retirement Headquarters, they can help you with the process. Go Google the independent income system or go to americasretirementheadquarters.com to learn more, and then just click right there and schedule a time to speak with them and start developing that plan. Or if you prefer, give a call, 419-794-3030. There's more to come on America's Retirement Headquarters with Nolan Baker and Scott Kirshner. Second half of the show coming up next. Welcome back to America's Retirement Headquarters, home of the Retirement Guys formula and America's Medicare Associates. 419-794-3030 is the number. americasretirementheadquarters.com is the website. Don't forget, if you missed earlier half of the show or previous shows in its entirety, you can always search via Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube. Just search for America's Retirement Headquarters. All the previous editions up there for you on demand. Now, guys, we've talked about the importance of estate planning and leaving a legacy for our loved ones. Perhaps not. Tracy Ellis Ross is the star of the ABC sitcom Blackish, and she recently joined Kevin Hart on his show, Heart to Heart. And during that show, he revealed that her legendary mom, singer Diana Ross, actually isn't going to be leaving her kids any money, even though she is worth $250 million.
So she always used to say, I do all of this for you, and yet I'm not leaving you any money. You better make a career for yourself.
Yeah, you go
She's
figure it
like,
out.
yeah, I will pay for your housing, your medical, and your food until you can get your own job and then go do your thing.
So I've heard both sides of this coin. Do most of your clients want to help their kids, or do they feel like they've done enough and the kids should have to find their own way?
Well, I guess, from all of us being parents, we always want to do whatever we can to help our kids, help themselves,
Right.
I would say, at the end of the day. When I think about a lot of my clients, at least, and I'm sure you can comment on the clients that you help out too, but a lot of my clients, they think, I've done a lot for my kids. I've helped them out. We've got them started in life. We're always here for them if we need. But at the same time, I think they're really trying to focus on enjoying their retirement.
Absolutely.
And, sometimes I'll hear people say, if my last, paycheck bounces, that was the perfect retirement. At the same time, I think I do hear people that say, hey, I want to, be able to leave some money to my loved ones. So every situation's a little bit different. It can kind of fall into those two camps of being able to help people out. One of the things that we've tried to do is, I think in my experience, there oftentimes is money left over.
Right.
And I think, if you look at it, whether it's in Diana Ross's example, a charity or whether it's family, I think the one person that we have to get out of this equation is the one relative that nobody should try to leave money to, and that's Uncle Sam.
Uncle Sam is right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so if you had a choice, if there's money left over, leaving it to a charity or leaving it to, some loved ones, that's why we've created the Ultimate Estate Planning Checklist. And, within the Ultimate Estate Planning Checklist, this are areas that you want to be taking a look at.
Mm-hmm.
I had get together with some new families here recently, great couple, wonderful family. Some of the kids are already starting to become independent. Some of them are still finishing up school. And I found out is, they didn't have really any estate plans in place.
Right.
So that is kind of where it's a little bit scary. And so when you think about guarding your legacy, even if your desire is your last paycheck balances, there are still, I think, very specific steps that you should take to help out your family in a situation. That's really why we've put together that ultimate estate planning checklist. Scott, you had talked about it, the example of mom, working on some prepaid funeral arrangements.
Yes.
Unfortunately, there's two realities in life, right? Death and taxes.
Those are the two.
So let's eliminate taxes. And, in mom's situation, whether she did it or any of our listeners do it, it's a really good idea to have your prepaid funeral done and taken care of. I can speak from personal experience. I lost my brother tragically, and I was a disaster when I was trying to help, his wife out with picking out stuff. And, at that time I was just like, whatever's the best, let's just get the best for him, and that was the mental state that I was in at the time. And of course, as those of you who have been listening, of course, I also lost my mom to pancreatic cancer, which, cancer sucks, but I had an opportunity to talk to mom. We had an opportunity to do the prepaid funeral. We had an ability to make some decisions. And I would say the funeral home did a fantastic job. But just, again, one perfect example, the guest book, it was $250 at the funeral home. I went to the local store and I just bought one for like $15 just so I could get, the names to send thank you cards out. So those are why some things are important. The other thing that I think is important is I would say 90% of the time I get together and I review beneficiary forms. So not everything passes through your will. Things that go through your will are things that are what I would call probatable. So a will is, traditionally a letter of instructions to a judge.
Right.
And I'm not an attorney. Scott's not an attorney. We're not trying to give you legal advice. We're just trying to help you out. And in fact, we work with some great local attorneys that do estate planning that if you need some of these legal documents, you can get in place. But most financial accounts, you think about like the retirement accounts that we manage, you name a beneficiary. And when you name a beneficiary, that's where the money's going to go. So it doesn't matter what it says typically in your will. It's what's in writing on your annuity contract, your life insurance policy. And those are where we find mistakes that are out there. And, the reality is you cannot change a legal document after the fact.
Right.
So even though maybe it was the intent to do something different, this is what's in writing. So you want to get it right. If you have not reviewed your estate plans in the last 2 years, give us a call. We'd sit down. We'd have a conversation. The great news is we're not attorneys, so there's no clock ticking in the background.
Exactly right.
Our first visit is just to have a conversation. And even if you wanted to get a copy of our ultimate estate planning checklist, we'd make that available as one of our listeners where you can go through this and you can share this information with your family and make sure that you've crossed the T's and dotted the I's so you can be a little bit more confident to make sure all of your legal documents are up to date. And no matter what your wishes are, you're trying to get your wishes as close to perfection as possible.
Yeah, you if you want to make an uncomfortable Christmas or Thanksgiving, don't have things prepared and have to go through settling an estate, especially when there's some money involved. I've personally experienced it. It's not uncomfortable at all. It's very uncomfortable, I should say. You owe it not only to yourself, but you also owe it to your family, the ones that are actually going to be settling the estate. It's a very, very difficult conversation to have. Most people don't like, my mom, she absolutely hates talking about it, always has. When I told her I was going into insurance, she says, oh, no, not one of those people. And I go, Mom, seriously, it's not that bad, right? My mom and dad bashed me a lot, as you can probably tell, right? But, no, that's all kidding. But, you have to make sure you've got things put in place. This guide that Nolan and I have created, not only does it have the beneficiaries and a lot of the accounts in there, but it also, after settling some things up with my dad, account numbers, passwords for different accounts, like your cell phone. If something were to happen all of a sudden to the one that pays the bills and argues with the cell phone company or the cable company, and then the survivor has to get on the phone with them and talk about it, they don't have any idea what those passwords are. Those are some of the areas that we put in with the Ultimate Estate Planning Guide. It's kind of crazy. Naomi Judd passed away here not too long ago, and I just read an article where she left nothing to either one of her daughters. And that's her prerogative, Like we started out this segment talking about is it a good or bad? There's no right or wrong, my daughter, we talked in the last segment, my daughter's hopefully off of Dad's payroll now, right? These are things she's going to have to come up with. And, your kids are getting close to being off of Dad's payroll, and these are things that they're going to have to come up with. So, it's very important to make sure that you have your estate planning put together. One simple question for all of you listeners and viewers out there. Go home tonight, and if your parents are still alive, ask them that difficult question. I'll bet you'll be surprised that you have no idea what Mom and Dad really want. I mean, what do you want? What color of, what type of casket? What do you want a casket? Do you want cremation? What type of service? What color of thank yous? And most people have no clue because they refuse to talk about it. And once again, not making a decision is not doing yourself any favors at all when it comes to this.
No, I think as you point out, it can destroy family. So it's something to have a conversation with Mom and Dad about, something that you should be looking at if you haven't looked at it in a couple of years, and something we're always happy to help with.
Again, it could be an uncomfortable conversation, but it's less so than, not having anything put in place and then trying to figure out what's going to happen from here on out. Now, if you are the deceased, that's not something that I think you really want for your family to do. So this Ultimate Estate Planning Guide, again, it could be a very valuable part to give some comfort to your family member, your survivors, in a time where comfort is very much needed. So have that conversation. It's awkward, but again, it is definitely, I think, well worth having. 419-794-3030 is the number how you get started, how you get a copy of that Ultimate Estate Planning Guide, or you can also go online to americasretirementheadquarters.com. Guys, a recent survey found that about 40% of Americans now fear retirement more than death. So sorry for keeping the focus on the death thing here, but the main reason is that people gave is the fear of growing old without having enough income to support themselves. I think that is a very real and understandable concern. Is that something that you guys see when people come in?
Well, when I was looking at this week's topic and I saw that one, I think that stat is very sad. It should be one of the best times of their lives.
Absolutely.
I can think of, even my mother-in-law, when she retired, they got an RV, and her husband went and spent 2 years traveling around the U.S., staying at different military sites because he served in the Marine Corps and in the Army, and they have really good rates. They take great care of veterans. He got to travel the U.S. for, 2.5 years, came back home, and now are settled down. I can think about other clients of mine that are out and about traveling right now. Retirement should be a point in your life that you get to enjoy the fruits of your labor. I think for a lot of folks that have worked hard, they're able to do that. I tell people to turn off some of the news channel and turn on the travel channel. That's one of the best things that you can do. To me, even people that have saved a lot of money. So if you're listening and, you've saved more than $500,000, you may still feel a little uncomfortable of, do I have enough money to make it? And part of that comes down to making sure you have some strong guarantees in place. We talked about some guarantees in the first segment of the show, but when you look at it, you have reliable income and you have variable income. You have, what is your minimum monthly income needs. If you look at your minimum monthly income needs as, how much does it cost to keep the roof and lights and, the food and all the things that you need, and how much of that income is covered by reliable income like annuities and pensions and Social Securities. If there's a gap to that, you should look at having a conversation about filling up that gap with more reliable income. Then you leave your variable income for the fun stuff. Right. So like last year, again, in 2021, the market did really well. So maybe last year was the good year. You spend the extra profits, for your fund money, and then use that to take the Viking River cruise, or use that to, remodel the house, or use that to do something else. And then, years like this year where inflation is really high, the market's down, gas prices are very high, maybe this is the year where, you fix up the car versus go get a new car.
Sure.
So I think looking at your money in a different way would help that issue, because what we want to do is we want to see you on the Travel Channel telling your story about, where's the next trip that you're going.
Nolan, do you think that maybe some like with those numbers, I agree with you. Those numbers are horribly sad. But when I look at those numbers, I look at it and I think, well, some of the things that change the older you get in your retirement, your catastrophic exposure for health is going to go up. We talked about long-term care earlier, but some of your expenses as you slow down and stop traveling a little bit kind of go down, right? But those numbers with people worrying about running out of money are probably the ones that are traveling, the ones that are out doing things and not just kind of sitting back and kicking their heels up during retirement. So if they don't have the money to do that, I would think that those where those numbers are coming into play. If you said your in-law bought an RV and was traveling around, well, if they run out of money, they're not going to do any of that stuff. So I would think that those are the areas where people are really concerned about running out of money, because let's face it, my mom at 84 years old, her day-to-day activities are nowhere near what it was when they were, Mom and Dad would go to Florida for 35 years. They would spend January through April in Florida. That stopped about, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago maybe. So they kind of became homebodies, and those expenses were a lot lower. I'm not so sure that they were concerned about running out of money as those people that are really spending their money are.
Yeah, valid point. So, if you're listening and you have questions about your money, you're a little worried about running out, let's have a conversation.
Absolutely.
It's always worth a second set of eyes to take a look at it. Maybe there's some things that you were not aware of. Then maybe there's ways that we could, boost your income by getting more yield on your dividends and interest. Maybe look at giving you more reliable income to be able to lay your head on your pillow at night and sleep a little bit more comfortable. That's what we do. We're here for your retirement.
And know that you're not alone out there. It is the number one fear among retirees and pre-retirees is outliving your money. So if you have that concern, completely valid. But what are you doing about it? Again, control what you can control. Take the steps. Start putting together a plan and really, shore up your chances of success in retirement. 419-794-3030. That's how you get the team at America's Retirement Headquarters to help you with that. Start developing that plan. 419-794-3030. And online, americasretirementheadquarters.com. This is America's Retirement Headquarters. Have you heard of the flush tax? Well, buckle up for a list of the most unusual taxes that governments have come up with when we come back from the break. And welcome back to America's Retirement Headquarters, home of the Retirement Guys Formula and America's Medicare Associates with Nolan Baker and Scott Kirshner. 419-794-3030 is the phone number. AmericasRetirementHeadquarters.com. That's the website. Speaking of websites, guys, a personal finance site, Go Banking Rates, came up with a list of unusual taxes. For example, in New York, there is a tax for having someone pre-slice your bagel. In Utah, there's an additional sales tax on anything you buy from someone who's not fully clothed. And Maryland imposed a so-called flush tax for water. Obviously, guys, governments are always looking for ways to separate us from our money. How important is it to have a strategy when it comes to taxes that we have to pay?
Well, if you think about it, I mean, all the taxes that are out there are so many different taxes that are out there. When I saw the flush tax, I was kind of reminded of a trip I took a couple of years ago. My wife and I, we went over and did the Adriatic Sea. So we went from Venice and we cruised up Adriatic Sea all the way to Croatia. And when you stopped and got off at different places, you actually had to pay to use the bathrooms. And, I wasn't coming from the U.S. I wasn't used to that experience.
Sure.
I don't know if that went to their government or went to the guy that was guarding the door's pocket, but, somebody's always trying to get into your pocket one way or another. I think it's even things like, if you look at your cell phone bill, I think there's like a tax from the war from, before I was even born.
Right.
So there's always somebody trying to get into your pocket. If we take a look at it, I mean, we can sit here and we can certainly poke fun at taxes, and we could spend all day talking about that. Unfortunately, we only have a couple minutes left on today's show. There's things that you can control, and there's things that you can't control.
Absolutely.
We spend too much time dwelling about the things that we have little to no control over. There are absolutely things that you can do to control your taxes. So, there was a judge, I think is Honorable Leonard Hand, and he talked about there's two systems of taxation, one for the informed and one for the uninformed. So if we look at it, for somebody that's close to or in retirement time, there's a strategy, and there's strategies that can be done to help lower your taxes. In fact, one of the ones we talked about, if you've been listening to the show for a while, is a couple of weeks ago when the market had really kind of bottomed out, and who knows what the market's going to do in the near term in the future, but the market had bottomed out. We were promoting on the show the concept to take a look at a portion of your retirement account and convert it over to a Roth IRA. So a traditional retirement account, you haven't paid taxes on that. And what happens is you're going to be forced to pay taxes when you take that money out. Now, most people will wait until they have a forced required minimum distribution, known as an RMD. And so what happens is if you're successful in your investing approach, your account is worth more, which means if your account is worth more and you haven't paid taxes, your tax rate's going to be higher. Mm-hmm. Well, they're looking at this massive spending bill yet again, right? Massive spending bill that Washington wants to cram down America's throat to spend more money. And, we haven't even been able to come up with any money to cover the past spending bill that we have and the massive amount of debt that we have in the United States. To me, that math doesn't work out. I mean, I don't have to have a calculator to figure that out. Somebody has to pay for this massive spending. And what I believe it's going to be is in the form of higher taxes in the future. So again, focus on what you can control. One of the things that you can control is things like a Roth conversion. So you can take a look at taking a portion of your money, converting it over to a Roth IRA. If you follow the rules and regulations on how that works, again, generally speaking, you have to have the account open for 5 years and be after the age 59 and a half before you take your profits out. But then you can get them tax-free. So would you rather pay money now while maybe some of the investments are a little bit lower, or would you rather wait till they're higher in value when we could have a higher tax rate as well? So I think lots of good things to do about lowering your taxes. It's a matter of having a tax roadmap and creating a tax roadmap. So again, one more area that I think the comprehensive planning that we offer here at America's Retirement Headquarters is we love working with accountants. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a CPA. I'd always say, get tax advice from your tax professionals, but, let's work hand in hand. Most people meet with their accountants, and there's great accountants here in Northwest Ohio, but, their job is really to record history, and they're, filing the taxes for last year. If you haven't had a proactive plan for what do I need to do between now and end of the year to lower my taxes for next year and or in the future, you're the type of individual that could benefit from a tax roadmap. And, again, the market hasn't fully recovered. Prices are still low. There's still great opportunities where you can look at things like selective Roth conversions and tactically control your taxes.
Well, you said a couple of times today, you've actually mentioned control the controllables. That's one of the things that I've always, when I was a coach, I would always tell the kids, control the controllables, and this is a way to do that. Control the taxes. You can't control what's going to happen with the market. We can't control a lot of the other things out there. And you can actually use that as you go out through life. Don't worry about some of the things that you cannot control. They're going to happen. You have to deal with them. But the things you can control is where you need to be proactive and really take action. And taxes is one of them.
As we mentioned earlier, when it comes to the markets, a lot of advisors, a lot of financial professionals out there, they are looking in the rearview mirror and saying what has happened and then being a reactive approach. The same sort of thing with taxes. In retirement, it is vastly different than in the working world. You don't want that rearview mirror approach to it. You want to look, again, as Nolan said, in the coming year and the 20, 30 years you're going to be spending in retirement, because that money goes without saying, but I'm going to go anyway. The money, less money that you have to pay to Uncle Sam is more money you get to keep towards your retirement. So a tax strategy is as important as anything else when it comes to your retirement. All part of that plan to get started with the team at America's Retirement Headquarters. Again, 419-794-3030 or americasretirementheadquarters.com. All right, we're coming up on the end of the show here, but let's have a little fun here. Let's imagine you can send a letter back in time. What kind of retirement advice, guys, because we were having fun about this during the break, would you give to your younger self? The Principal Insurance Company put that question to a group of retirees, and they had some pretty predictable responses. Start planning earlier, take advantage of 401k matching funds if your employer has that. But what kind of advice would you, as the retirement guy's formula, what would you offer?
Wow. Okay, so we did talk about this during the break, but one of the things for me personally, and then Nolan, I want to get your take on this and kind of some of the things you would talk to your clients about. But me personally, I remember I was working back in the early '80s. I was working for a company called Toledo Trust, who was bought out by 3 different banks and is now Fifth Third. But in any case, I had stock options. And some wise friend of mine told me, take advantage of everything you can. And I remember I put is the maximum amount of money I could put in, and I bought all these stock options, right? Well, lo and behold, I turned about 24, 25 years old, and I'm like, I want to have some fun. And I cashed in, sold it all, and bought a stupid motorcycle.
Oops.
I'm like, seriously? I look back now, and I would write a letter saying, okay, don't sell stock to buy a motorcycle. I mean, that's kind of a dumb thing to do. There's all kinds of things that I would tell myself, invest early. And that's one of them, that people have. Try to stay healthy, I enjoyed a life back then. I enjoyed life a lot, probably more than I should have. Probably stay away from a couple of girls that I went out with. That would be another piece of advice I would give, but that's not. I guess that's investing advice because they cost me a lot of money.
Maybe.
So you stay away from some of the things that are going to cost you money in a bad way, and invest.
If I think about it, if you're a listener, think about what advice you would give your 20-year younger you. For me personally, I'd say failure's okay.
Yes.
When I started in this business and I was young, I've been doing this for 28 years. I always feared failure.
Yeah.
And I can tell you at 46 years old how many times I failed in different things that I've done. But you know what? I have learned from those. And, it's by taking those calculated risks is, how I've become very successful in, building the practice that we have. So don't fear failure. It's something you can kind of embrace is what I would tell my younger self. It's part of life. But that's something that I would give myself. So, Chris, I'll ask you. I'll put you on the spot.
Yeah,
so
let's hear
is there any good advice you'd give younger Scott or younger Chris?
I would put more money. I did take advantage of employer matches, but I didn't do nearly as much as I probably could have at the time. And then maybe investing a little bit more in this fruit company called Apple. I did a little bit, but I could have definitely done
right.
a lot more out of that. As we wrap up on the show here, I'm reminded of one of my favorite. I think it bears true here. The best time to plant an oak tree 20 years ago. The next best time is right now. Sure, you may say, I wish I could have done this 20 years ago. I wish I could have done this, but there's no time like the present to really get serious about it. It's never really too late to start putting those things in motion. May need a little bit more work down the line, but you'll all be better for it. So if you've delayed planning for your retirement, if you've delayed talking about long-term care or proper strategy, why not go ahead and get started today and start preparing for the next 20, 30 years of your life? America's Retirement Headquarters, they can help you with that. Real easy, 419-794-3030 is the number. You can always find them online, americasretirementheadquarters.com. I want to thank you so much for spending part of your day with us here on the show. We genuinely do appreciate it. Please have a great week ahead of you. And guys, as we wrap up, I want to leave you with the final word.
I'd say just along with that topic, don't let the past steal your present or the future. So
absolutely,
we're always here for you. We're on standby, ready to help out anytime you need us. In the meantime, have a great week. Enjoy the beautiful weather while we still have some here in Northwest Ohio. We'll be back same time, same channel right here on 1370 WSPD. We are America's Retirement Headquarters, home of the Retirement Guys Formula and America's Medicare Associates.